Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Brian Garcia Larson, and this is BGL F the Odds. It's a podcast of me just pouring into people, sharing my life story. This is episode one, so I'm going to start from the beginning of my journey. Um, Hopefully, we got some good stuff for you. I hope we can impact some people today. So, first of all, this podcast is sponsored by my business, which is BGL Financial Freedom. I help people with tax-free retirement. And we are not going to talk about that today, but I gotta plug myself here and there. So how do we get to this point? So I grew up small town, South Dakota. I was an athlete, played four sports growing up, and life was good. All I wanted to do was be a D1 athlete. That was my whole mission growing up. When I was 9 years old, I was an AAU regional high jump champion. When I was 10, I was the state runner up, Elks Hoop Shoot Free Throw Challenge. Lost in that challenge. I took second place to the national champion. So, yeah, we had the national champion out of big old state of South Dakota. And I'm going to come back to that story because that was a pivotal part of my life, right? The struggles, the lessons always in the loss. So, when I'm 12, got blessed enough to make the All Star team. Our team made it to the Super Regionals, Little League World Series. What an opportunity that is for a 12-year-old boy. So let's fast forward to high school. So, played at high levels as a kid and spent about 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day in the gym, depending on what day of the week it was. And I just couldn't get enough of being a gym rat and figuring out how to sharpen my skills and just get better and constantly, um, do everything I could to fulfill my dreams of being a D1 athlete. So sophomore year, I'm going into high school and I go to a basketball camp. Summer going into my sophomore year and broke two camp records that week. One was free throws. I beat the kid that beat me when we were 10. Set a camp record for that. Played in the All-Star game. My parents, my parents showed up. My girlfriend showed up after the All-Star game. We go to my grandparents' house and have some sandwiches. And my girlfriend says, "Brian, I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." Well, so we go downstairs to my grandparents' basement. It's just the two of us, and she says, "Brian, I'm pregnant." I'm 16 years old, and I was definitely not equipped for that conversation. Keep in mind, an hour ago, I was playing in the All-Star game. All I could think about was pushing hard, pushing to get through to the next basketball season, figuring out if I was going to get to play varsity as a sophomore. And at that moment, life changed. So I told her, "Hey, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Be a dad, here to support you." So we go upstairs and we act like nothing happened, right? Like we didn't have that conversation, trying to hide that from my parents as long as I possibly could. So time goes by and I finally have to tell my mom going into my sophomore year of high school. My mom was devastated. I'd always, my parents had always, done everything that they could to provide for me to make sure that I had everything that I needed to be successful, with my athletic career and all those things to move forward. My mom was a special ed teacher. She's a special person. And it was tough. I'd never seen my mom so sad, just the disappointment, letting my parents down. So my sophomore year rolls around and I had worked a ton that I could going in from that summer. One on my game and two, I got a job. I had a job, but I was even working more hours because I knew that I was going to have more money. I didn't know what that looked like at the time. 16 years old, like how would you know? So March 1st, my daughter's born. March 2nd, I played my last high school basketball game. I didn't know at the time it would be my last basketball game, but it was. A few days after that, my girlfriend's father sat me down and he said, "Brian, what are your intentions?" I wasn't equipped to even understand how to answer that question, to be honest. what were my intentions? So I grew up with stepdad who'd always been there for me, always played catch with me in the backyard, took me to the YMCA to get my gym time in. Was always my support system when it came to sports as a kid. My biological father had never been in my life. I think I'd seen him, 4 or 5 Christmases up to that point in my life. Never watched me play a game, moved out of the state, not his fault, but I didn't want that for my daughter, to not be present when I was a kid. So he says, "What are your intentions?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be here, for my kid and your daughter." And he goes, "Brian, we're not doing that." He goes, "You need to do the honorable thing and marry my daughter, and life will go on as we know it." He goes, "We're not doing that. You're not just going to be half in, half out." He goes, "You're going to get committed and you're going to marry our daughter." 6 months later, or I'm sorry, 6 weeks later, we got married. My sophomore year of high school. A week after I turned 17, I got emancipated. My wife, now I have a wife. My sophomore year of high school, my wife and I and my baby moved into Section 8 housing because that's what you can afford at 17 as a sophomore in high school. I got 2 minimum wage jobs, washing dishes, we're on food stamps, and now I'm my own adult. Time to figure life out. So I'm washing dishes, and I had to ask myself, what was I made for? Keep in mind, 12 months earlier, what I was made for was working out 6, 7, 8 times a day, going after my dreams of playing college basketball, maybe coaching. I don't know, maybe playing overseas. I don't know what that would look like, but those were all the things that I was pushing to try to accomplish. So I had to ask myself, what was I made for? It wasn't washing dishes, wasn't living in a studio apartment with one little bedroom that was the size of my closet now. A little 300 square foot apartment. My first night living in Section 8 housing, I got my bike stolen. Never lived in a place like that before. I never felt unsafe or anything like that, but I knew that was different than what I'd ever been around. I had a car, but I keep in mind $3.25 an hour back in 1990 didn't buy you a lot of gas, right? Barely put food on the table. I can remember lots of nights where I went to bed hungry because I wanted to make sure my wife and baby had food. And I'd just tell them like, "Oh, I ate at work," even though I hadn't, because that's what you do. You gotta push through the things to make you stronger. I love the shirt I'm wearing today. It says, "Without struggle, there can be no progress." Right? You always anything anything that we want to have in our life is usually on the other side of the things that we don't want to do. It's just the way it works, unfortunately. So I'm washing dishes, leaving work, after an 8-hour shift with my hands just completely pruned up and my feet were always wet from busting suds for hours at a time. And I went to my manager of the restaurant and I said, "Hey, what's next for me?" And he goes, "Brian, what do you mean what's next for you? You're a junior, you're a sophomore in high school and you're a dishwasher. Like you don't have any skills to do anything else. This is what you do. You come here and you wash dishes and you don't complain." I said, "Okay, no problem." I said, "I'm going to be your best dishwasher." He's like, "I hope so." He didn't care, right? Yeah, I'm replaceable. 325 an hour. He didn't care. He just wanted me to show up on time so he didn't have dishes backed up. So 6 months goes by, and all I could think about was how can I make more money? How can I push to where I'm not so stressed out about buying formula, buying diapers? One night we got a blizzard in South Dakota. It's fall, like October, so it's been about 6 months, right? Been at that restaurant for 6 months. The cooks are out back messing around. The ticket comes up, waitress puts it up, and I had to make a choice. right? I've been trying to figure out how to get out of washing dishes for 6 months. I'm not allowed to be back behind the line where the food was. The cooks weren't there. I went back there and I made the best chicken enchiladas that I'd ever made in my life. The waitress comes back and she goes, Brian, did you make these? I said, yes, I did. She goes, wait right here. I'm thinking to myself, where am I going? Like, I'm washing dishes. I'm not going anywhere. And the GM comes back and he goes, Brian, did you make these chicken enchiladas? And I go, yes, sir. I said, I'd really like an opportunity to learn how to cook. He goes, these look amazing. He goes, it looks like you already have. He goes, your next shift is back here cooking. He goes, thank you and nicely done. He goes, do you know where the cooks are? And I go, no, sir, I don't. I knew where they were. But sometimes you got to just let people do their thing, right? So I took my opportunity and I got promoted. So let's fast forward. So that was the beginning of my junior year. So I worked extremely hard at the restaurant. I kept looking to see who was making more than me and what were they doing. How could I learn that skill? See, life is a journey. And you have to look at it as we just have to keep growing ourselves. We can't get more unless we do more or we learn more. We learn more skills, we bring more value. So I spent the next 2 years figuring out, okay, how can I run the kitchen? I love to cook. I'm like, okay, well, we can figure this out. By the time I graduated from high school, I was the kitchen manager. I was doing all the food orders and I was learning a skill. I learned what the percentage of labor should be for my kitchen. I learned what the percentage of food cost should be. I learned how not to order too much, but not too little. I learned how to figure out, you know, Friday nights are a 10K day, Mondays are a 2K day. Like in sales, I learned, when we want to have our big deliveries versus our little deliveries. I learned all those things because I plugged in and I figured out how I could learn a skill, how I could learn how to run a restaurant. So let's fast forward, right? I graduate from high school on time with my class. I didn't have great grades, but I always say that graduating from high school was one of the hardest things that I've ever accomplished. And that's simply because I wasn't equipped for the situation that I put myself in. We can say, oh, we're victims. No, we're not victims. We are we are whatever we are the byproduct of whatever we did. Whatever our circumstances were that we put ourselves into. Like I put myself in that situation. I decided to have sex at 15 years old. So I put myself in a situation where that could happen. And it did. Doesn't happen to everybody. So so don't ever think like, oh, why am I here? Well, there were things that happened that, I'm not saying everything's like there's circumstances that, maybe that were out of your control, but just control the controllables. I was in control of that situation and I was the one who put myself in that situation. So I graduated from high school. I got out of government housing. I became assistant manager of the restaurant, got off food stamps, and I bought my first house when I was 20 years old because I decided, right? I made a decision. I took a stance. I said, this is not who I am. This is not what I was meant for. I was meant for more. And I think so many of us in life, like we get comfortable, we get complacent, and we lose track of what we're meant for, what our dreams are, what we were made for. So I had to take everything that I learned from sports, right? I was an athlete at 16 years old, and I had to apply that to my life. I love working with athletes in today's world. With my business, I hire as many athletes as I can because I know athletes, they don't get tired when it gets hard. They know how to push through pain. They know how to show up on time. They know how to be ready for the day, and they know how to push through pain. And most of them are super competitive and they want to work harder than the person next to them. Those are all things that they don't take any talent to do, right? Showing up early isn't a talent. It's just a decision. You made a decision to show up on time or early. We used to say in our sports teams, if you're 10 minutes early, you're late. So I applied that to my work life. Be here on time. Be the first one there, the last one to leave. Get better, 1% better every day of your life. So, graduated from high school, got through the next, bunch of, I was in the car business. I've been in sales my whole entire life. So let's fast forward 35 years where I'm at today. My life's been a pretty big struggle because I didn't own my story. I started owning my story about 3 years ago. See, I'd had some success in business, but I think the real success comes from when you decide to control your own destiny. We all have a story. We all have pain. I chose to finally make my pain my power instead of living with the pain deep down inside for years. When I was 48, I decided that I was done with that pain. I was done with the hurt of not being able to play ball my junior and senior year. I was done with the pain of not playing ball in college, not hitting those dreams. I was done and letting go with all those things. I had to make a stance. And my stance was, Brian, you've been through so many things in life. Now it's time to start helping other people. So what did I do? I became a Rotarian, service above self, right? We're servant leaders. We go out and impact our community. From Rotary, I met somebody that was a committee member in the Fiesta Bowl. There's my helmet right behind me with also a football that I earned this year for leadership and exceptional hospitality for one of the teams that came this year. So got invited to be a member of the Fiesta Bowl. We raised $4.3 million for our community last year. We gave $1.25 million to grants for teachers. 500 teachers in Arizona got a $2,500 grant right to their classrooms. We didn't ask what they were using it for. We didn't make them write essays. We didn't make them do all these things. All they had to do was apply. It was a random pick. 500 people get that money. And it goes right back into the classroom to help these kids and help these teachers. Super proud of that. I started speaking at high schools. I started impacting people that I used to be, right? 16-year-old kids that maybe been emancipated. Some of them have kids. Some of them are just on the verge of making bad decisions and they need somebody to go, hey, we got you. We understand. I'm mentoring quite a few teenagers right now in different states. Why? Because I put myself out there. I said, hey, I got you. I understand what you're going through. And we need more people that are gonna make impact on people's lives. See, we're the most equipped to help the people that we used to be. So I feel like it's my gift to the world to be able to take my struggles and turn them into impact. So from the Fiesta Bowl, which I'm still a committee member, obviously, I'm still a Rotarian. I got asked to be on the board of directors at my advisory board of my local YMCA. So I grew up as a Y kid. Didn't have to ask me twice to be on that board. Right. I was a gym rat at the YMCA. That was really the only facility that we had that we could go work out at was the YMCA. So I said I'll become an advisory board member on one condition. I want to be able to impact high school kids. I want to be able to pour into these kids that need help, that feel like they don't have any other options. They said done. So I'm working with our iLearn program. These are kids that couldn't make it at the regular high schools. They're doing online learning. Some of them, I think there's 3 students currently that have children or are pregnant, and they're just trying to navigate through their life. They just don't know what they don't know. And I've seen some dramatic improvements in these kids' lives just because they know they have somebody in their corner that's been there. They know, like, hey, it's going to be okay. If Brian could do it, I can do it. And that's one of my big passions. We're currently working on a teen mentoring program at the Y that'll be free. We're getting funding for that. I'm getting people that are willing to say, hey, I'm on board with you. Let's go make a difference. So those are all the things that that we're doing right now. And it doesn't matter where you're at today, it matters where you want to go tomorrow. You know, if I could give anybody any advice of how I got from a 16-year-old teen dad living on food stamps, living in government housing, just barely getting by, going to bed hungry, where I'm at today, is you got to develop yourself. I was not a reader. I barely graduated from high school, but the things that have changed my life the most as of recent, right? When I made a decision when I was 48 years old, almost 4 years ago, I'll be 52 next week, is you got to take a stance on what you're most passionate about. And I was passionate about impacting others. Now, I didn't necessarily want to do all the things that that were going to give me the ability to help others, right? That's the painful part. But see, whenever there's something that's super uncomfortable, you got to lean into that. I knew I wanted to help others, but I knew I wasn't equipped yet to help others. Just because I'd been through it myself, I still had a lot to learn and a lot to grow myself. So I started reading books. I'm currently trying to read a book a week, and I'm not quite there, but I'm going to get there because I know that that's what the people that I look up to in this world that are making real influence and real impact on other people, that's what they do. That's what leaders do. Leaders are readers. If you need to start with audibles, then start with audibles. But you know, if you have questions on where to start with that, if you're not a reader and you want to start reading and you're like, hey, where do I start? Like hit me up in the comments. Just tell me where you're at in life, or you can message me, and I'd be more than happy to help you get started with that. The other thing I did is I knew I had to learn about myself. You have to learn how to lead yourself before you can lead others. So I got certified as a business life coach. I'm certified as a Sherpa, which is through Giant Worldwide. You can look that up. Basically, just as a guide for people in life, right? We try to help them get through the things that they're having hard times with, their struggles. The five voices. So the five voices, you got to learn what your voice is, right? Are you a connector? Do you connect to people? Are you a nurturer? Nurturers are mostly like teachers. My wife's a nurturer. I'm a connector. I'm a connector, creative pioneer. My wife is a full-on nurturer. So we couldn't be more opposite. I used to think, man, it would still be so much easier if we had the same voices. I'm sure she felt the same exact way. But guess what? Being able to grow yourself and understand how the other person thinks is super powerful because now we have a perspective of everything versus just one thing. So my voice only makes up of 11% of people. My wife's voice makes up 43% of people. If her voice is my least voice, what does that tell you? I have to be self-developing myself every single day because I struggle with talking to 89% of the world. So I know that I have to understand where people are coming from for me to help them. Not everybody's coming from where I'm coming from. So those are all things that I've had to do and things that I've had to do to grow so that I could put myself in a situation to help others. And there's so many things that we can do. You just got to start somewhere. You know, if you're a teen, you're in a bad situation or you just don't know how to get out of things in life, just plug into somebody that you know can help you. And there's always a way. There's always a way. Don't ever feel like you're not worthy or let somebody else tell you that your decisions that you might have made or some place that put position that they put you in, you put yourself in, it doesn't define you, right? That was just a learning thing. I make so many bad decisions in my life. See, I run a business. They say entrepreneurs make 73% of their decisions are bad or incorrect or wrong or whatever. you fail, right? There's a book called Fail Forward. I recommend that book. It depends on where you're at in life, but it was a really good book for me, right? Because I feel like I've failed over and over and over. My favorite quote is right behind me by Michael Jordan, right there. It says, I have failed over and over and over in my life, and that is why I succeed. See, the lesson's not ever in the win. The lesson's in the loss, right? How did we get better? What did we learn for? There's a reason that so many professional athletes, college athletes, high school athletes, they watch film. They watch film almost more than they practice, probably a lot of them more so. But they do that because that's how they learn. They learn like I wasn't in the right spot. If I would have been over here just a little bit, or if I would have just saw this quicker, right? That's how we learn. You know, the greatest quarterbacks in the world had Peyton Manning had a bunch of interceptions his first year. Why? Because he was in the learning curve. But he watched film, he watched film, he watched film, he watched film. He practiced, he practiced, he practiced. And by the time he retired, the game was super slow. His first year in the league, the game's fast. Everything's coming at you, just like life. When you're learning something new, everything's coming at you so quickly, and you got to remember, like this too shall pass. The better you get at things, and the more reps you get, the easier it's going to get. The thing that you want most right now in your life is probably the thing you're fighting the most. That's the way it works. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to hit the old like and follow button. More content to come. You're just going to get me raw and uncut, not edited, just just real true life stories from real people. I'm going to have guests on here, and it's just going to be people that want to pour into other people and help them. Have a blessed day and go be great today.